Okay, you are live.
Okay, thanks, Alice. Good evening, everyone. We'll get this meeting started and we'll call to order as of 6 o'clock. I don't see any other clocks other than the big one that says 1 minute to 6, so I'm pretty sure we're handy to 6. We'll call it 6. We have enough people, so I'm thinking we can call a quorum. Does anybody have a conflict of interest that they need to declare after having looked at the agenda tonight? I don't see any hands going up or anything, so I'll say everybody, no one has any conflict of interest. If you've all had a chance to review the agenda for this evening, could I have someone move that the agenda as presented be adopted?
So move.
Okay, and a seconder? Brad. Okay, thank you. All those in favor of the adoption of the agenda signify by saying aye and just raise your hand. Aye. Okay. So I see all the hands are up. Thank you. Any nays? Okay, thank you. If you've all had a chance to review the minutes of August 26, 2021, if there's no questions, could I have someone move that those minutes be adopted as presented? Okay, it's Glenn moved that they be adopted. A seconder?
I'll second it.
You'll have to tell them that.
Do I see it? I don't see it.
They'll see you.
Favor of adopting the minutes?
Hey, my sound, is it getting a little louder?
Your sound is on, I do believe. They'll mute you if they want you to, so you just can mute that.
Yeah.
But you can announce yourself there so that they can hear you. Make sure that you can. I tested it this afternoon, so we should be able to.
Black Cyber just entered the meeting. I don't know if you can hear me or not.
We can hear you, John.
All right, excellent.
Okay. I'll talk to you later.
Good, thanks. Just let me know before you're leaving.
Hmm?
Let me know before you leave.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. If we can get back to the meeting, appreciate it. Adoption of the minutes, we had a first, a motion to adopt and a seconder. All those in favor signify by raising your hand so we can see you on the screen. Thank you.
The sound has not been, was muted. Can you, something is wrong with the sound.
We can't hear you, Kim.
Alice? Can you hear us? Can you hear us now?
Just barely.
Barely.
Well, sorry about that, folks. We'll get that fixed. And I can't see the volume either.
Yeah, there isn't really one. Can I ask everybody to mute their microphone unless you're speaking? And how is the sound now? No?
No, well, that can't hear us either.
It changed, for some reason it changed when John came on.
One second.
Also, it almost looks like the directional mic at the planning office isn't working. It seems like it's kind of pointing off, away from people rather than when the person speaks, it directs itself to them.
Is that any better? You folks hear me better now?
Yes, yes.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Looks like our input volume might have been a little low on this end. Okay, can I have a show of hands for anybody that might be able to hear me? Hey, that's great. Looks like I got everybody back again. Thank you.
We'll cover the motion to accept the
Yeah. So before we started losing our volume, we were looking at the adoption of the minutes. We had someone that made the motion. We had a seconder. And I was looking for a show of hands for all the members to vote in favor of adoption of the minutes of August 26th. And Claudette will be looking at all your hands. Any nays? Okay, thank you, everyone.
Ken,
Yeah.
if we get enough, so I can set up the
Yeah.
thing, we missing
Oh, yeah, do we have, how many
LSD
members?
How many LSD reps do we have?
Kathy
Kathy's there.
and
Sheena.
2, 3.
We have, we have all of our LSD members are present. So
Okay.
we don't need any alternates at this meeting.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to then business arising from the previous meetings. The first item for discussion is the motion to repeal version 7.8 of PRAC bylaws and replace with version 7.9. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dennis Blair.
I'd like to make a motion to repeal version 7.8 of the PRAC bylaws and replace it with version 7.9.
I'll second that motion.
So I have a motion on the floor from Dennis and a seconder, sorry.
Yeah.
Jim over here has seconded it. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hands
Should have a
in
question
signifying aye.
Should have a question first.
Okay. I guess I should have asked if there was any questions first. But are there any nays? I think it was pretty well discussed at the last meeting as to what we were doing. But good point. Thank you. Okay, that motion's been adopted then. Thank you. The second item on our agenda is the speed sign update, and that was Hollis was going to give us some more information on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can everybody see that on the screen?
Just 1 second. Ours is. Let me see if I can grab that and move it. Yes, we're good to go.
Okay. So after the meeting last month, we went through our policies and procedures to make sure they were updated with all the correct information, and I sent that out to the LSM and all of the CAOs in the region with instructions to send that out to the LSD reps and well, the CAOs already had this information. So, and he confirmed to me that he would do that, and apparently he has. If anybody has not received that from the LSM, please let me know. I will give it to you directly. But I went through the LSM because it is for everybody in the region, not just elected board members. So that that information has been disseminated to everybody.
Can I have a copy? Somehow I did not receive that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Any questions on that?
No.
Okay.
Thanks, Aldous. Next item we had was a draft request for proposals for the Wall Street property. Do you have an update for us on that, Paulus?
Sure. So again, I've sent that out to all of you yesterday, I believe is when I sent that out. This document here, which is just a draft version of an RFP that we could send out for the property on Wall Street. The gist of it is that we are going to sell this land for $1 to the successful bidder. The concept is, if you go through the RFP, there's a bunch of criteria that we're looking for from people that want to bid on this. And then what will happen is, depending on what we get back for bids, if it's just a couple of bids, then we'll make a report of that, and we will present that at the November board meeting, potentially. And then the board can decide which is the successful bidder. If there's a lot of proposals, then we'll shortlist before we, inundate you with a bunch of proposals that maybe some are not much merit, and but we'll pick like maybe the top 3 or top 5, whatever you'd like me to do. So that's the concept. Of course, all of this is subject to board approval, and if you guys want to change anything on here. So this would be a discussion for the board.
Okay, thanks, Hollis. Has everybody had a chance to read through that request for proposals? And
Yes.
Are there any questions, comments? Everybody thought it was okay?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I just wondered if it would be good, since it's located in St. Stephen, if Mayor McEachran had any concerns or anything like that before we go to vote.
Okay.
Hello, no, I looked at it. It plainly stated any concerns that the town would have. It related to, that had to follow our bylaws and all that sort of thing. So it was pretty clear there. So, and again, I mean, this is something that we can discuss, when we do get a proposal to, it still have to go to the board again, I assume. Yeah. Okay. No, I'm good. Thanks, Brad.
Good comment, Brad. Okay, I guess I could put it out on the floor then for a proposal, for a motion to put this RFP out. Would anybody like to make that motion? Glenn is making the motion, a seconder.
I'll second it.
Dennis is doing the second. Any questions on the motion? I'm trying to get that one down. So if we could go to a vote, then all those in favor signify by raising your hands. Okay. Any dissenters, comments, hand up? Okay. Did you get all those, Claudette?
Was your hand up for nay?
No. I think she was up for an affirmative.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Claudette. Okay, so we'll put that one out, the RFP out, and we'll see what comes back, and we'll discuss it again in November. New business bylaw update for January. And with that one, we discussed that a little bit the last time, but I'll hand it over to Hollis for him to review that.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to let everyone know we're going to require an update probably in January to reflect a few of the items that have happened to update our bylaws. They're not too serious, but they're included in the bylaws is the PRAC bylaw, for instance, as an appendix. So that's got to be updated. There is a potential committee name change coming up, and there might be a couple of other minor items like that to update the bylaws. But the other thing is that we do need to update the per diem amounts in the bylaws when they reflect a cost of living increase. So I am, I guess, asking the board that we can put together a small ad hoc bylaw update committee that will meet once just to go over and make sure it's okay, and then they make a motion to the board at the January board meeting. Wade?
Okay, Wade's in agreement with that. Do we have how many, you were looking for 3 people, Hollis?
Yeah, 3's probably plenty. That's what we had last time, 3 plus me.
Okay, Wade's got his hand up to volunteer. Sam has his hand up to volunteer. Any others? We're all rushing.
I will. I will.
Dennis is
One
putting
meeting,
his
one
hand up.
meeting.
Yeah, so we have the 3 now that will go: Wade, Sam, and Dennis. Okay,
Perfect.
with that, I'll move on to the next item. Strategic plan update and discussion. And of course, I'm going back to Hollis again on this one.
Okay, so this is real quick. We've been talking a bit about strategic plan and that we need to kind of put something together this fall to maybe come up with a plan to update the strategic plan. However, several things have happened, and none the least of which is local governance reform, and we don't know how that's going to affect the Regional Service Commission, and it could be in a major way. And I don't know what the timeline of that is, and I don't know what that's going to be. So I think that it would be worthwhile, and this is just a suggestion, but I think it would be worthwhile in January, maybe, when we know a little bit more, if we kind of planned on having maybe a special meeting to look at nothing but the strategic plan. Maybe it's some minor updates that we do at that point in time, knowing that there's going to be major ones coming, or we hopefully should have some more information at that point in time, if the white paper is out by the end of the year as promised. I don't know. I guess my purpose for talking about this is that we were thinking that we need to, kind of dig into it and do a bigger update on the strategic plan. But I feel like we should probably hold off until we figure out what happens with this other stuff and what that timeline is. But we might want to look at it for some minor updates and tweaks. So that's kind of my discussion point or topic for the board. It's up to you what you'd like to do, but I think that that's probably going to be the best, if we can kind of plan on maybe doing something in January. Maybe it's minor, maybe it's going to be a bigger deal. We don't know.
Okay. Comments from anyone? You agree with waiting until January, Wade?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. At that point in time, schedule it for January. If the government's dragging their feet, and we have no idea which way they're going yet, then we move ahead with some minor changes. But there's no sense of overhauling the whole thing until we know what direction the local government reform's going.
Okay. Any other comments on that one? I think the consensus is that we hold off until January, Hollis. We'll look at it then. Okay, thank you. We'll turn over to the committee and staff reports, and Hollis, you're up first on that one with the executive director's report.
Okay, executive director's report is a little bit light this month because there wasn't a huge amount of things going on there. But since I've written that report, there's been a couple of meetings I've had since. One was the one many of you were at last night, which was the local governance reform, what we heard meeting in Penfield. I won't rehash that one. But previous night we had a meeting with public safety. So there was a couple of presentations from our REMC plus the neighboring REMC on some updates and things they're doing for EMO for the region. And then the second part of that was a little bit, it was interesting because it was community resiliency. So this is a newer initiative by the government falls under public safety. The concept is they're going to have 12 coordinators, one for each region, on community resiliency, and it's a more holistic approach than just emergency measures. It's going to include some other things like just a variety of different analyzing how resilient we are in a lot of things for, economically or physically, how is the health services that we have in the region, those types of things. So in our region, they don't have anybody yet. And so they are looking for somebody, and this would be a part-time position that would connect with the steering committee. Apparently there is a steering committee. I don't know that it's complete. I don't know if they've met. I don't know what they've done. But there is a steering committee for the region for this community resiliency. So the government is looking for a coordinator position for this. It's part-time to go out and I guess we end up with a report at the end of this. It's an 18-month part-time contract they're looking for to come up with an action plan at the end of it, which with actionable items to make sure that the region is resilient. The earlier part of that meeting with EMO, there is some money available, $50,000 for each region for various projects. So that was 2 nights ago. So in my report, just going back to the report that I've given you all, I'm not going to read everything here word for word. But as far as solid waste goes, we are exactly on track of where we should be. Our fears have been allayed for losing a large piece of our foreign waste. That seems to be continuing exactly as it has been. So there's been no issues there. Our public drop-off is open and it's getting great reception. The people seem to really like it, and it seems to alleviate a lot of congestion and confusion down on the waste cell itself, because which is very important right now, because right now that's a very complicated area as we are nearing the top of one particular cell and planning to fill in a road and change the road and things like that. So it's much better in that version. Our planning department, of course, is flat out as we're still, you can see the graph there. It's off the charts record number of building permits, and it's not really slowing down. We are able to keep up though, and the turnaround time is not bad for the inspections and for getting permits out the door, and we're not skipping any steps with anybody. We've had a few issues with some of the projects and contracts ongoing. People seem to be in a rush, and trying to skip some steps when they're building stuff. But we've got a pretty good, well-trained staff now, and those things are being caught. So that stuff is happening, and other things are that our gas pipe installation is complete for the landfill gas. We are working on the flare part and figuring out how to maybe get that operational for a lot less money than we were quoted by just doing some simple troubleshooting. That's the gist of my report, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Hollis. Question, Wade?
Yeah, Hollis, on the building permits and stuff, we had asked there if there was a way we could get a graph to show where they're concentrated or how they're distributed throughout the region.
Yes.
Any work done on that, or?
So there is, and in fact, there's actually it's a GIS application that overlays onto the actual map, so you can actually see the actual places, and we are working on putting that in place. The exact same thing. I actually stole it from Miramichi because they did that. So we will have that available as soon as I can pull one of them off and to do a little GIS work on putting that together. It's actually not as complicated as you think to do this, but it's very, very interesting to see what parts of the region is where all the growth is. So, but I'm going to make a note, Wade, to follow up on that.
Thank you.
Hollis, I have 2 questions.
Yes. Certainly, John, go ahead.
Thank you. I was wondering if you were part of any discussion in which there has been update on the upcoming rate increases on the policing. We had a meeting with the commander of the J Division, and he almost assured us that the previous years they have been in anticipation of the increase already set money aside. But in the email that you send us, there is some reservation. I know that we have to pay more for the RCMP starting now, but for the past, I thought we were covered through some proactive anticipation of this. Do you have any information on that?
Only information I've got is what I actually just sent everybody this afternoon, was that, the collective agreement is signed. It appears that they're going to not change anything for 2022, but, I would expect more information coming out to see what the increases in costs are going to be. I have heard figures of 20%, but I don't know that that's, don't take that from me. I don't have any better information than that.
Okay. My second question is, you mentioned the attempt to manage the flaring from the landfill. I was wondering, is there any plan or thinking about using that flaring as energy source for supporting the operations there?
Absolutely, there is. The first thing we need to do is actually get the flare we've had for a long time, and it hasn't worked for, 10 years, because we didn't have enough gas. But now that we have the new wells and the new pipes and everything connected to it, so the very next thing we need to do is get that operational so that we can determine A, how much gas we actually have, because we don't have a good number on that, and B, what the gas is. We think it's probably about 50% methane and 50% random stuff, but we don't know that for sure until we actually get this connected. Once we have those things, then the exercise that we're going to do in the spring is figure out what is the best use of this gas rather than just setting it on fire. So one possibility, the typical thing that most landfills do is they'll buy a generator and generate power and sell that back to the grid. That's not always the most economical thing to do, and in some cases it's not a great idea, especially where we're located. We're kind of at the end of the grid, so I don't know that the infrastructure is there from NB Power to handle that. So another option is the natural gas pipeline is only 5 kilometers away from us. So it is possible to extract the methane. They do this in the States, and construct a pipeline with federal government grants or gas tax funding or whatever to get that done. And it's 5 kilometers through the woods of Crown land, so I don't have to worry about easements and things too much. And we can sell that straight to, it's Liberty, I think, is in charge of the pipeline right now. So we could sell that gas directly to them, and we can use some of that gas internally to maybe heat buildings and things like that.
Thank you.
So it is an exercise we fully intend to do in the first part of the year after we get the flare going. We need the initial data first, but we absolutely are going to make a plan for the landfill gas to make best use of that resource.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Hollis. Any other questions on the executive director's report?
Hello,
Al,
Hollis.
sorry.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Hollis, I am a gas guy, so I would sit down with you sometime and or take a little tour. I think I've seen your flare set up before, but maybe just chat about it. You never know what we might come up with.
Absolutely. Right.
Yeah, I would be interested to be part of that discussion if it is organized.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Great.
If there are no other questions on the executive director's report, we'll move into the strategic plan update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Strategic plan update. I'm not going to read it all for you. Most of this has been, if you go through, I sent out an actual copy of the whole strategic plan that this time with, a bunch of accomplishments on the right-hand side and what we're measuring for success. And but the only thing I really do want to point out here is that if you go through that strategic plan that we currently have and you see some of the things that we've done and some of the things that we've accomplished, this is why I think we do need to revisit it in some form in January, because we've ticked a lot of boxes. So, we don't want to sit back. We want to see what new directions we've got a little bit of capacity and I don't mind pushing people a little bit too. So So that was really my only comment on the strategic plan update. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I know when we start to look at that strategic plan update, there was a number of ideas that had come up to look at. One of them was, as we're now kind of combining forces on planning and home inspection, or not home inspection, but building inspection, those kinds of things, which the whole region is benefiting from. We also looked at, there's other areas such as bylaw enforcement and a few other things that we thought we might be able to dip our toe into as well, but we'd have to discuss that later on. So we'll hit that again in January. We'll next go to the Regional Collaborative Committee report, and that's Wayne McQuarrie.
You hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, we started off by talking about the local governance reform and what was gonna happen there, and we bounced a bunch of stuff around and talked about what it might mean for this committee. All kinds of different scenarios, so there's nothing really you can really definite yet, so we just have to wait and see what the government's coming up with. Sherry gave an update on the recreation, which included plans for the Charlotte County Fair booth, exploring ways to promote the Recreation Hub website, including using our existing app and user database and a regular newsletter. She gave updates from the summer student, including that all trails in the region have now been GPS tracked. There's 84 facilities have been updated with photos and technical information. 77 assessments were prepared. There's updates for the website that will include all the new GPS trail data. There was a discussion on the creation of a trail guidebook for the region. The committee had discussions around the trails in the region, including the possibility of common branding and signage for all with data such as difficulty levels and the inclusion of QR codes and on signage and other printed material. And then again there we discussed future possibilities for other regional shared services that could call under the Regional Collaborative Committee. And there were no motions at the meeting.
Thanks, Wayne. Any questions or comments on Wayne's report? Okay, thanks, Wayne.
Yep.
The next report we have is from the Technical Advisory Committee report, and that's Winston Gamble.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Hollis did discuss some of the things that are in the Technical Advisory Committee. Cell 12 construction is underway. Progress has been made on the subgraded clay product. The cell project will be completed by the summer of 2022. Now, also something Hollis had mentioned is that we have a lot of the workers here that do work on these projects rather than contract them all out. As you mentioned, the land gas collection pipe was installed and ready to be connected to gas wells. And the public drop-off complex is complete and open, and if you've been down to see it, they did an excellent job on that. It's really lined up well. And the upgrade and the progress control of monitoring system for leachate treatment is ongoing. It should be completed this fall. Yeah, there was a little problem in the leakage there, but they don't know how bad it is or how much they're gonna have to do to fix it. And the ongoing investigation into warranty work on the leachate treatment system upgrade project was discussed. We're trying to make sure that we don't get shafted on contracts. But a name change for the committee was discussed. A consensus reached by the committee to revise the name of the Technical Advisory Committee to the Landfill Technical Committee. Because we wanted to do more with the landfill as a name than the committee. So the motion is to revise the name of the Technical Advisory Committee to the Landfill Technical Committee.
Okay. Before we move to the motion, were there any questions on Winston's report? Any comments? Okay. Then we'll move to the motion. Winston has made the motion to change the name of the committee from Technical Advisory Committee to the Landfill Technical Committee. Do I have a seconder on that?
Yeah,
Okay. Sam, I think, had his name up first, or hand up first.
Yep.
So that's a seconder. All those in favor of the name change signify by raising your hand, please. Okay. Any nays signify by raising your hand. Okay, thank you. Name has been changed.
That's my report.
Thank you very much, Winston. Okay. The next is the financial report, which will be given to us by Hollis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We sometimes have Mark do this because he can answer some of this stuff more better, a little better than me, but generally speaking, it's a good idea to have your executive director be familiar with your financials every once in a while too. So I'm not going to go through every line on here. Suffice it to say, the things to look at would be, these are the end of August, so 2/3 of the year on the actuals, and then the budget amount is the total budget for the year. We are in a surplus position. There isn't anything that I would draw to your attention for any concern, but certainly I'm willing to answer any questions that you might have about any of it. Our local planning is also in a slight surplus position, as is our cooperative regional planning. The summary income, I think, is where you're going to get most of your good information from. It's a little bit more detailed. And then, of course, our balance. So if there's any questions, please let me know. Don't get too excited about that surplus. I know it looks huge at 1.2 million, but that's just because we've got some big bills that we haven't paid yet. They're coming due for some capital stuff. So.
Okay. Any questions, comments on the financial statement as presented by Hollis? Okay, thanks, Hollis. At this point, normally we would go to the date and time of the next regular meeting. Are there any comments or questions from anyone? I know we have a fair number of new people on the board. So I'd like to take an opportunity, if you have any questions, please feel free to raise them. And we'll do our best to answer them for you. Okay, there's no one jumping up for questions, but
I guess.
Okay, Glenn. Yeah.
I got one quick one, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's probably, something you've explained before, but I've only been to a few meetings, but I've heard about having a surplus a few times.
Yes. Yep.
And I look at page 19, and it talks about surplus of second previous year. And it talks about August 2021 actual 897,000 and 2021 annual budget 1.3. So, I mean, do we always have a surplus and a big surplus, or is this an exception?
Well, what happens is, because our accounting is not like your typical private business, we basically have to follow municipal accounting rules here. So, and because we are capital intensive operation, so building cells is $1 million, and a compactor is another $1 million, and we tend to chew up capital fairly quickly. So the surplus typically will go into our capital reserve if there's at the end of the year, whatever's there. We also finance most of our capital stuff out of operations from the surplus itself. So I can't budget, that's just how it kind of works out. And every so often, like every so many years, say we need to buy, every 7 years, we're going to buy a new compactor, basically. And a compactor is $1.1 million. On top of building landfill cells at a cost of, we're running about 1.2-ish million, depends on the size of the cell now. So we have to build those well, this one only lasted us 2 years. Next one's going to last us 3 years just because of the shape of it. So what I'm saying is that there is always a surplus, and that surplus is almost planned because we chew up that surplus by financing our capital out of it, because we don't borrow money here. We don't have any debt, certainly don't have any deficit. So I don't know if that helps.
Well, how much is in the capital reserve?
Right now, there's 2.6-ish million.
Is that higher than normal, or is that normal?
It's about normal, but we also, there's a few risk factors. There's a few risks that we have. So one risk is our foreign waste. The foreign waste is a big chunk of our income, our revenue. So if that exchange rate changes on us and nothing else changes, that's it. That can be a $300,000 or $400,000 hit to our revenue. So then we start have to dipping into our capital reserve to continue with our capital plan of replacing waste cells and other equipment. We had a situation this year where our largest U.S. customer was bought by a company that actually owns their own landfills. So we were a little concerned that we're going to lose some or all of that waste, and that would have been definitely a requirement to get into that. So what it is basically insurance, so that we don't, it's insurance against raising your tipping rates. We're not raising the tipping rates again this year. We haven't raised them for 4 or 5 years. And the longer we can kind of keep that steady without dipping into, we can, if we start dipping into our capital reserve, that's fine. But if we start getting to a point where, we look at our long range and we know that we need it, that's the point where we're going to raise tipping fees. At this point in time, we don't have to. And that's our intention. Our business model is such that, we want to be as steady as possible for all of our clients, which is all the LSDs and municipalities, without raising tipping rates. And it's kind of a point of pride with me that we don't, because I can tell you just about every other landfill is this year going up by $5 a ton.
Well, I think that's great that we don't have to raise tipping fees, and it's great that we have a surplus. But if the surplus, is there a point where we say, okay, where our surplus is too big and we're going to decrease tipping rate?
Maybe.
It's an interesting dilemma that you raise, Glenn, because you do have a situation where, correct me if I'm wrong, Hollis, but I think we have the lowest rates in the province, or close to the lowest rates.
Second lowest. Pine Tree up north is just slightly under us, I think.
And I'm sure the U.S. customer helps us a lot.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. So, and this came up. I sit on the finance committee, and this comes up fairly often. Our what do you call them? Not the accountants, but the auditors brought this up with us about 3 years ago. And normally, if you were running a general business, you would be closer to the bone with dealing with the numbers. But here we like to have a little overreach because of the issues that we deal with, as Hollis has mentioned, the American waste, the exchange rates. And there's also, we get material that comes down from, oh my gosh, I can't remember the name. Hollis, what's the other?
Western Valley?
Upper River Valley.
Western Valley.
And so we Western Valley, we make some money from them. We get about 50% of the waste that they produce, but that could very easily go away as well and go to the other folks up north. So we have a number of variables that we can't really rely on when we're doing this, and that tends to be the reason why we run these.
But I mean, in 3 or 4 years from now, we'll just say hypothetically it grows to 5 million. Are we just gonna let it keep growing?
You see, it's Hollis said, you know, you buy a compact that's $2 million something. You put in a new cell and it estimates over $1 million something.
Okay.
And plus all the other equipment that we have, if we did, to try to keep it online, to change it, to keep it newer than.
And if you were to have a disaster out at the Landale Fill where you lost 1 or 2 or 3 vehicles, total losses, you still have to be able to operate. So that means you're gonna go out.
They must be insured.
You're gonna purchase
Yeah.
new ones, like tractor or exit.
There's settling ponds and stuff, if anything happens to them, and that's a big job to get back into.
You raise a very good question, though. I mean, it is a good question. And if we get to that point where maybe we can revisit it if it gets large enough that we think we have enough to get by with.
I think Wade's got a question up there.
So-
Wade.
Oh, Wade, sorry, Wade.
That's all right. Couple things to consider is yeah, we're heavily subsidized when we get the, you know, the waste from Upper Valley and we get the waste from Washington County, that subsidizes and helps us keep the rates down. That's a variable that we can't necessarily control. So we need a bit of a buffer. But the second thing is you got to look at where the surplus is coming from. Is the surplus coming from, you know, we got a little bit more from Washington County or a little bit more from Upper Valley or something that raised it? Or is it because we didn't spend money on items that we were expecting to do? Did we overestimate other line items? If we're overestimating other line items, and we've got $100,000 left because we didn't do something or because we overestimated by 100,000, then that's a good point Glenn's making. We should kind of, you know, maybe try and get a little bit closer on that. If it's because of things like we got more waste from commercial, more waste from Washington County than we expected to, and that brought us up a couple hundred, 3,000, then that's just gravy.
Yep, it's actually a little bit of all of the above. Some of the things you're seeing, if you go through this financial report and you go through, say, the expenses a little bit, you'll find that a lot of them are under budget. And some of that is because of some of the efficiencies that, you know, I've been working on continuous improvement and things like that since I got here. So eventually those things do start to pay off. You know, we do have lower energy costs, or we do have lower wages because, you know, we've lost a couple of people through attrition that I haven't replaced, or, you know, we do have some things that we, you know, so there are little things that that we all try to do here in this organization all the time. So, you know, our solid waste director is fanatical about this kind of stuff too. Eventually those things do pay off. So we do get more and more efficient. It's much more of a lean machine than maybe it was a few years ago. But then the other thing that happens is that, we're conservative when we estimate how much waste we're going to get from, especially foreign, because that's the riskiest income stream to us. So we're always a little conservative on our budgeting for that, which always leads to a little bit of a surplus, which always is what we use. We pay for our capital out of operations instead of dipping into the reserve. But
there's others, an accountant, but there's many ways to handle this, right? Because if we have to put money for future purchases, well, we should budget that, right? And say, okay, we're going to put 100,000 for the purchase for the new cell or whatever, right? Because instead of just having a fee and saying, okay, we're going to have a little bit of surplus. Well, we didn't really have a surplus this year if we have to put money away to build a new cell in 3 years.
no, that's exactly right, Glenn. And that's why it looks like a surplus, but sometimes it isn't. It's actually
right. And to me, I'm not an accountant, but I ran many budgets over my years. And I got as much flack for being under budget as I did for being over budget.
Yeah.
Because both are wrong, right? So to me, I don't really see that we're over budget. We just aren't accounting for in our spreadsheet where it needs to be put aside for. If this, based on this conversation, we're not under budget. We just aren't identifying that we have to budget away for the cell, for instance.
Yeah.
But that's okay. We
That's
probably
a good point.
enough.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe we can refine that in some way
Well,
with Mark.
Well, just for me, from being on the outside and never being in here and seeing in 2 years how big a surplus, it's like, well, how come, right?
Yeah.
But it, but it's not really a surplus. Because you have to put money away for the bill to sell in 2 years.
Right.
We do have a spreadsheet that.
Yep.
Shows all the equipment and stuff like that.
The big thing is-
I see where you're coming from with the terminology.
The big thing is, though, the way we're doing it keeps us from having to borrow money and pay interest on money when we do have to do certain capital things, right? We've got the money ourselves.
Really just a reporting issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really all it is. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Alan?
I've asked some of those same questions that Glenn's asking there a few years back, and when we have, like, as a municipality, I cannot hold funds for such a time, or if that's the case, if I have extra money, I get a low tax rate. So I do agree that we should be budgeting things to show where it's going, so it's clear to the board what we're up to, and it keeps us on a plan. Like put it, make a budget line for it. I totally get what Glenn's saying there. It's just, gives us more accountability.
If you look at the capital plan, which we send out, so the capital plan is where where our operational surplus goes. And you'll find that they more or less match up.
Do we depreciate equipment, Hollis? Do we depreciate equipment?
Yep.
Yes.
So essentially, the depreciation, if we have a planned life for the equipment, should be to some extent move on a linear model, right? Like if that compactor is going to last 3 years, then we have to depreciate 30% of that every year, right? Or something like that.
Yeah, no, no, it's a good point, John, and that would be an easy thing to produce as well, the depreciation.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Well, that was a good conversation. Sorry, Alan.
I just want to add, I just don't want us to be able to, when you have the X amount of a few $1 million sitting there and just spend it for the sake of spending it. That's why we need to budget and show a budget line and control us better. It's just that's the way it is. The way we have to do it in the municipality. That's all.
Okay. If there's nothing else, then I'll give you the opportunity. Wade, yeah.
Sorry, guys. I just the thing Hollis sent out just a little while ago on the policing, the 2.5%. I didn't know if you wanted to take a couple minutes and just explain that to everybody. And it looks to me like they've been kind of saying, like that's sort of they're an extra 2.5% for inflation that they're putting in the budget every year. And I think they're saying that's added up. So we've got a little bit of kitty, a little bit of reserve, depending upon what comes out of this new collective agreement. Am I right there?
You know as much as I do. I sent it to you guys as soon as I got it. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Maybe for next meeting, we can just have what that really means to us. I know we don't negotiate the contract, but it's all part of our, part of what the government charges us on our tax rate. So it'd be nice to know if it's going to hit us hard or if we're not too bad.
If I may add one thing, there is we had recently a presentation by the commander of the division who handles our region, and we discussed the fact that the official line is that this board shapes the priorities of the policing, which is apparently by all what I heard, including from the RCMP, is not the case. So at some point, someone has to clear the books and say, no, that's not the case. I can't hear you.
Yeah. Al, yeah.
Yeah. So just like what we were just talking about our own budget, that's a good example. What the police were doing is cushioning their budget to allow, so we don't have a huge increase now. But why did we pay that 2.5% more for all those years without knowing? The police costs are high enough, so that should be laid out and shown to us as well. Anyways, very similar to what we were just talking about. And one other thing, when Hollis was talking about that, saying the 20% hike, that's an employee rate. It's not going to be a 20% hike on the total bill. It's not going to amount to that. Still not a good scenario, but it's not 20% more.
Maybe 18.
19 maybe.
Okay,
Over a 5-year period, I think, anyway, so.
okay. Well, thank you very much, everyone. I better get back to my notes here. The next meeting is set for October 28th, 2021. By the way, that's my wife's birthday. And I don't know whether I'll be welcome back home if I. Anyway, October 28th, 2021, 6 p.m. Anybody have a problem with that?
No.
Okay. Okay, that's what we'll set for the date then. Thank you.
I move we adjourn.
Well, before we do that though, is there any questions that came in from the public, Hollis?
No, Mr. Chair, I don't have anything.
Okay, then I'm gonna have Dennis move that we adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Okay, Dennis has moved that we adjourn. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Good night.
I'll let you know, Ken, how things work out.